And why are we doing Arista? Because we are in, where are we?
We're in Toscana.
We're in Toscana. So this is a really classic dish. So before you begin, you want to get all your ingredients out. So for the arista, you want to use a bone-in pork loin. And here we have a roast that's about 3 1/3 pounds. And you want to have some fresh garlic, not garlic in a jar, not powdered garlic, fresh garlic. You want sale marino or sea salt. And I like to use coarse or fine. Doesn't matter for this particular recipe. And then some fresh ground black pepper. We want some olio di oliva extra virgin olive oil. And we want some white wine, some fresh rosmarino, which is rosemary, and we're going to add halfway through the cooking some potatoes. Okay, very simple. And you say, well, that's not a lot of ingredients, but that's just the point. The point is that if you use quality ingredients and you keep the treatment simple, you have captured what is the essence of Italian cooking. That's it. I'm going to wipe it off, and while I'm doing that, Marie, I want you to take some of the leaves off of the rosemary. And that's the way to do it. Just take it and just slip it right off the stem. So we want about 3 or 4 sprigs. While she's doing that, I'm going to dry the roast off. And then put some holes here and there, just randomly, inside. So just go all over, make it fairly deep because you have to really get that herb mixture in there. In Tuscany, you have something called lardo. Lard. And you see it's sliced very thin. And this block happens to be the lardo di Colonnata. Colonnata is a very famous area here in Tuscany from where this lard is cured. And so if you had a roast at home that was not as flavorful as this, you are not going to have access to Colonnata unless you're making a trip to Italy. So what can you do to give your roast more flavor? You can take some bacon or some pancetta. I would do pancetta because the bacon would be maybe too strong a flavor. And I would lay it over the top of the meat. That's going to add some juice, going to keep the pork moist, and it's going to give really great flavor. So that's just a tip. But we don't have to do that to this particular piece of meat because it has fat. Fat is good. Fat is good. All right, so let's put that over there. We might put a few pieces on yours, Marie, because just to show the difference. All right, so now we have rosemary and we need garlic. So how about a couple cloves of garlic? Smash them down. Atta girl, she's done this before. And at the end, we will add some black pepper. All right, so this is about the consistency you want of your paste. And now we can add, Marie, a little bit of black pepper to this. A little black pepper. You can add as much as you want. In Italian cooking and recipes and cookbooks, you see QB. QB, those letters mean quanto basta. Quanto basta means as much as you like. So if you like things salty, you're fine. Now, the next thing we're going to do is fill these cavities with the mixture. And I should tell all of you that arista, the word for this pork loin, comes from a story. Italian food always has a legend or a story connected with it. Comes from the 15th century when some Greek patriarchs were visiting some clergy in Florence. And the Florentines really wanted to impress the Greek prelates. So they decided to have a dinner, obviously. And they thought, well, what are we going to make? So they're going to make pork. So they make the pork, and they have it all flavorful like this with the rosemary and the garlic and the salt and the pepper. And when the Greek prelates tasted it, they said, aristo, aristo. And that meant good, good. So the name stuck. So this is arista, which to us is a roasted pork loin. But Arista is more aristocratic, don't you think? All right, so now we have this mixture. And you take a little bit of it, and then in those holes that you made, you really push in the garlic mixture. How much are you going to put in? Quanto basta. Lois, why don't you take a turn and add some of that, and make sure you go into all of the holes. Now this roast is going to cook at a very high temperature, instead of cooking it at a low temperature, and you're waiting forever and ever. It's my opinion, having been a cook all these years, that if you start on a really high heat and then lower the temperature, you get a nicely browned roast, instead of something that looks like a weak piece of meat when you take it out of the oven. So we're going to be baking this at 450 degrees. You insert the thermometer in the thickest part of the meat, but stay away from the bone until the thermometer registers 165. So that's an important thing. These cost $5 in a hardware store. Now, when Tuscans eat this, they like to eat it at room temperature and even cold. After we cook this roast, we're going to allow the roast to sit for about 10 minutes, just so that it can reabsorb all of those juices, because if we cut it right away, we'd have juice everywhere but in the roast, so we don't want to do that. So Lois, you're doing a great job. You got those holes filled? Yeah. Okay. This is not necessary, as I say, but let's just put a couple slices of the colonnata over the top, the lardo. Okay. So now we want to tie this together so the part that's semi-detached will hold together when it's cooking. You preheat the oven. Get the oven hot before you start. And for this roast, sometimes what I like to do, and this is not by any means a step that you have to take, is I like to brown the roast first on top of the stove in a little bit of olive oil. For the traditional recipe, you do not do that. You simply put it in the oven. Very good. You've done this once or twice, right?
Instinctive.
It's instinctive. Now, it looks pretty just the way it is, doesn't it? Then, we're going to put a little bit of olive oil over the top. We're going to rub that all over the roast. All over the roast. Good. And it goes right in that bake pan. You put it in the bake pan. Why don't we put it in the middle? Put it in the middle. And the oven's on, 450 degrees. When this reaches 165, it's done. But halfway through the cooking, we're going to add some potatoes, and we're going to add some white wine.